But you don't have to spend 6 months on shaking hands. You don't have to spend 6 months on advocating. Hi, my name is Lamaya Austin McKnight. I attend Florida State College at Jacksonville downtown location, and I am a Europe student within the business department. Like, I don't need to do that. I don't need to spend 6 months learning how to do that. We did not learn anything in learning and development. And that's what's so flabbergasting to me, because it's like, if you tell me half of the truth, you're telling me a whole lie. Because how can you have these students recruit me, such as my cousin? My cousin recruited me while she was in learning and development. How can you sell me a half experience? You know what I mean? And I don't fault her for that, because girl, get your $100, and girl, you know, you offered me an opportunity that I could benefit from. But how are you gonna sell me something that you didn't even fully experience? You know, that's what I'm discussing when I say, like, there's certain areas in this program where you're telling me half the truth, but it's a whole lie. You don't want to have a turnover. It's just unattractive for any business. It's unattractive to any foundation. You want to ensure that you keep retention. You want to ensure that you sustain engagement. It's quite comparable to YouTube. But I say all this to say, we had a lot of kids that just were straggling pieces. A lot of kids that were just malleable. A lot of kids that just were walking growth areas. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you put them in environments that just facilitate that weakness, you're not helping them grow. You're not. I was part of Europe in 2018. I was part of class 8. I was 18 years old then. It is 2021. I'm 21 now, and I've been pretty much so removed from that experience. But I wanted to have this conversation again because I've noticed an influx with my Europe commentary as it pertains to my YouTube statistics. And given that influx, there are a lot of comments that are quite presumptuous, as I have a experience that's adverse to a general expectation or a general consensus, as in my experience is deemed somewhat an unpopular opinion or an unpopular truth, because I am seemingly the only person discussing Europe in a way that is unflattering, when in reality there's probably a lot of people, as I know a lot of people, that have had an undesirable experience with Europe, yet they don't have the platform to discuss it, or they don't want to get on a platform and discuss it because they don't want to be scrutinized publicly. You know, there's some people that just don't feel the need to share a cautionary testimonial like I intend to do with my videos. So I'm not the only one with this experience, is what I'm saying. But often it seems, because I have such an adverse experience, because I have this unpopular opinion or this unpopular truth, people perceive me sharing my experience as if I'm attempting to project my experience onto the program, onto, you know, future students. And that's not my intent. I literally share my experience because that was my experience for my location. And it's a cautionary testimonial that I wish I would have received when I was, you know, doing the program. But, you know, I'll get certain comments where they're like, you sound mad because you didn't get a job. I'll address that later. You sound mad because you didn't get a job, or, you know, my experience was great. I don't know about you, but my experience is great. Nobody said your experience was terrible. I'm just saying my experience was less than flattering. That doesn't mean that your experience is less than flattering, but a lot of people take it as me saying that when I just literally am speaking from my perspective and my experience, you know? I'm not trying to project onto anyone's experience, as often people try to counteract my experience by projecting their experience onto my own, you know? So that's why we're having this conversation today. To address the statement of me being mad, that was just very presumptuous, and I don't hold it against that person because I speak very affirmatively, I speak very intentionally, so a lot of times that is perceived as me being abrasive or, you know, aggressive, but in reality, I had a really wonderful experience with the environment, the work culture, the people that I interned with. You know, the people that were a part of my Europe program and they were sent to this department to work or to extern. I thoroughly enjoy those kids. The individuals that we worked alongside with, whom were, you know, employed at the internship location, I enjoyed them as well. I thoroughly enjoyed my mentor at my banking institution. She was the woman that I told about me, you know, considering leaving the Europe program. She was the one that I went to and I was like, Europe did not prepare us as adequately as they suggest or as they should have, we need more training. She gave us the complimentary OJT, which is essentially the on-the-job training, or OTJ. She gave us on-the-job training that was customary for every, employee or acting employee. And then she also gave us a complimentary OTJ or OJT that I asked for because nobody else was asking for it. Like, I've always been that type of person to be very vocal about my concerns. I've always been just hyper aware, as I am also hypercritical. So I'm gonna speak when nobody else wants to speak. I'm gonna speak when other people want to speak, but they choose not to. So going back to my mentor, and I want to share this because I feel like my experience was interesting in particular, just given that I interned with my cousin. She was in class 7, I was in class 8. So when her externship was winding down, her externship completed when my learning and development completed. So when I went on externship, she was already a full-time employee at this department, and I was just externing there. So my mentor was able to bear witness to my cousin, and she was also able to bear witness to myself. And my cousin really set that tone, for me, as, we always do for each other. Like, we just always been taught, like, whenever it comes down to your academia, whenever it comes down to your occupational positioning and striving for success, you set the tone. Like, give a better work ethic. Be very intentional about what you do and what you say and how you, present yourself. So she really set the tone for me as far as, like, having a well-known rapport. Like, they're like, okay, you're so-and-so cousin, so I know you're going to be on it. And I was very productive. I was very just to the T. And if you're into astrology, and I don't want to be too informal with you all, but if you're into astrology, my sun is Libra, so I'm quite diplomatic, as I also am a people pleaser, because I love to have a harmonious environment. And because of that, I do find that I can be quite the perfectionist. I also have a Virgo moon, and that's how you feel. Your sun is who you are, your moon is how you feel. And I have a Virgo moon, so I can be very hypercritical as I am hyper aware. So I'm always trying to be the best of whatever I do because I can see the imperfections and I know that I'm very capable of fixing them. I have a Taurus rising, so that's like my most present self. When people see me, I'm very like quiet, chill, laid back, but I'm very productive, And then I also have a Scorpio rising as well as a Scorpio Mercury. And with that being said, I can just be very investigative, as I can also be very mysterious and cynical. So I say all this to say, like, all of these astrological placements in that realm of science really aids in my work ethic. Like, I'm really a hard worker. So my mentor always loved that about me. She loved that I was always willing to seek knowledge and, like, just pursue better. Like, I was always going to ask if I had a question. I was always going to do if I was capable of doing. I was always going to speak if it was necessary for me to speak. You know what I mean? So my mentor loved me. Like, within the first month, the first 2 weeks, she already told me I had a job if I wanted it. Even when I left, she told me if I wanted to come back, I could. So it's just interesting when people just assert themselves so presumptuously. But again, like, I do understand, because I'm not some, far-to-reach person or far-fetched person to where I don't understand people's mentality to those that they don't know. And they're speaking about experience that are, opposing each other. Whatever. Getting to the point, long story short, if I wanted the job, I would have the job. Like, working has never been an issue for me. Academia has never been an issue for me. I've always been good in those realms. So getting to the gist of this video, my particular or specific disdain for the Europe program, or at least for my location in particular, is the fact that we were ill prepared. We were not given the adequate information needed to succeed on externship. I was placed in home equity lines of credit. I wasn't placed in fraud. I wasn't placed in collections. I wasn't placed in credit or debit. And even my mentor at my banking institution stated, you guys should not be here. Like, this is not an entry-level location. Like, you should not be in this department, but we're here. because Europe wants to build a new business venture with, this current existing banking institution and not-for-profit, relationship. They're trying to, outsource to more departments in this financial institution. So getting to the point, it's like, you're putting me in home equity line of credits. Home equity line of credits is essentially like having a line of credit on your house. It's like having a credit card, but your house is your credit card, essentially. So if you mess up somebody's line of credit, you're messing with their domestic stability. You're messing with a lifelong credit that they've probably had for like 20 years and probably have to the day that they die. So we're dealing with serious mathematics, and not to degrade anyone that deals with fraud or collections or credit or debit, but you got some of my peers doing data entry, literally just typing on a computer or verifying information. You got some of my peers calling, hey, so you're late on a bill and we're going to need your money. They're doing outbound call center work. You got one of my friends doing fraud. Hey, it looks like somebody used your card. We're going to cut it off. Oh, you're calling me? Okay, cool. Well, we'll cut off that card. Like, for my friend's location, it was inbound and outbound. So occasionally she would get inbound calls, but more than anything, she was assessing outbound calls. For a lot of the students that were in my program, they were doing outbound call centers, and just lucky me, I get the inbound call center. But I feel like everything worked out so divinely, as it was humane intervention. And when I say humane intervention, it was my advisors that, made these decisions for me. And maybe it was, the steps that I took to get to externship or internship that, was a humanly intervention on my behalf. But everything happens for a reason. And I feel like I went through that experience because I'm obviously the only one that would talk about it. So, you just assess certain things. You're just like, that's just not right. You're putting us in home equity line of credit. You didn't teach us about these softwares. The reason why we were able to functionally do our job is because of the complementary training that we received with this banking institution. Europe, for the whole 6 months, I learned nothing about home equity line of credit. And even if they were to teach us the preliminaries of home equity line of credit, even if they were to teach us the fundamentals, they could not teach us how to do our job. They could not. And the thing about it was, boot camp was so rushed in that they literally just gave us these pamphlets or these BS assignments that pertain to our department, but it really didn't assess what we were doing. Like, we weren't learning or developing anything other than how to advocate for that brand. Me doing a 7-second resume, I know how to do that. Me being articulate, I know how to do that. I know how to do these things. And I understand that there's certain people that may not be so progressive in those areas, for lack of a better term or phrasing, but you don't have to spend 6 months on shaking hands. You don't have to spend 6 months on advocating. Hi, my name is Lamaya Austin McKnight. I attend Florida State College at Jacksonville downtown location, and I'm a Europe student within the business department. Like, I don't need to do that. I don't need to spend 6 months learning how to do that. We did not learn anything in learning and development, and that's what's so flabbergasting to me, because it's like, 6 months and you didn't teach these kids how to do collections. You didn't teach them how to do fraud. You didn't teach them how to do home equity line of credit. You didn't have people from that specialized department come in and say like, hey, this is what you're going to do. Hey, this is what you're going to do. The only time they did that was for fraud. But as far as like any other department that was to be assessed or to be actively worked within or worked upon, interned, they didn't do that, And something that I want to briefly discuss is turnovers. So essentially, turnovers is when, one, internally, you have children that leave the program. For whatever reason, they leave the program or they get kicked out the program. Like, we had this one girl, she just left the program because honestly, she was unmotivated, and I don't blame her. Learning and development was very unproductive. It was just a waste of time, especially for a woman who is a single mother and she needs to, I guess, get her finances in order, because when you do Europe, you're essentially a full-time student. She can't afford to be a full-time student when she's a full-time mother. So, she left the program because even the stipends weren't compensating for what she was missing out on in the real world, shall we say. So you have some kids that just leave, or some young adults that just leave, and then you have some people that get kicked out. I want to say, if I'm remembering correctly, we had like a point-based system. So say you were out of dress code, you lose a point. You come into school late, lose a point. You know, improper language, you lose a point. Anything that is unprofessional or that would taint the Europe brand, you lose a point for. And that would, you know, taint your personal brand as well. They're trying to enforce, you know, professionalism, which is a wonderful thing to do, especially for a program like that. Yet how it was facilitated or how it was implemented or executed, it just failed miserably. Because, for example, I had a friend whom missed multiple days of school. I can't say that it was a month, but it felt darn near close to a month. Like, she missed a lot of school. At times, she would be out of dress code. She finished the program with a job. Even on externship, she would miss days, or she would just be irresponsible. She was a very, you know, wonderful girl, but she was just very irresponsible at times. But she completed the program with a job. But you're sitting on E with your points. And I'm not just talking about her, you know, specifically. You just had a lot of people that lost points, but they're progressing as if they have them. You know what I mean? You have a lot of people that have terrible growth areas that could influence your external affairs, and that regards the turnovers as it pertains to these corporations. So as a not-for-profit, a lot of our funding comes from these externship locations. So that's why they're always trying to do these outreaches. That's why they probably put me in home equity line of credit, so that we could sustain another relationship, have another department, have another, you know, avenue of, I guess, income or relationship. So if you got a bunch of kids going to home equity line of credit, but nobody stays, you're going to close that relationship. Or if you go to home equity line of credit and every kid that comes in there is just terrible, they're illiterate, they don't enunciate their words, you know, they don't dress professionally, you're going to ruin that relationship, and maybe that bank all around is just not going to want to deal with you anymore. So, you know, we had a lot of turnovers in home equity line of credit, and that's also a reason why Class 9 did not have to go to home equity line of credit, because they finally realized, like, we don't need to be sending these kids there, after we had a sit-down conversation telling them, like, yo, like, mentally and emotionally, we don't need to be in this type of environment. It's not even the fact that we were in an inbound call center, just like on the basis of that. It was the fact that we were dealing with a very mature product, and we were not trained on how to deal with home equity line of credits. We were not taught that in learning and development. We weren't even taught like the preliminaries of home equity line of credit. Like, this is what a home equity line of credit is. The only time that I remember vaguely being pushed to acknowledge home equity line of credit during learning and development is when we got on boot camp. But that was extremely rushed. Like, everything was so disorganized during that time. But learning and development, we did not learn home equity line of credits. And what was so crazy was, you just understand how removed people are from a circumstance when your coach is like, yeah, I'm thinking about implementing home equity line of credits in the Europe curriculum. First of all, why was it never in the curriculum? Second of all, you can't do that because a lot of our software is like, I guess, institutionally specific. A lot of our software is encrypted. Like, a lot of our software and a lot of what we do, you can't do here because you don't have the resources to do it, and you don't have the people, you know, to teach that information. So it was just interesting because it really revealed to me, like, you just think like we're really out here just doing some kiddie work. You just think we're just out here doing some petty work. Like, no, like, I'm dealing with somebody's home equity line of credit. That's their house. If I mess up the funds, if I mess up the calculations, if I mess up the mathematics as it pertains to their house, they're going to be pissed because that's a credit line. You know, they've had this for years upon years, and they're probably going to die with that, honestly. So, you know, we're dealing with like fixed rates and adjustable rates. We're selling rates. Like, we were just doing so much, and it was very mature in comparison to the complexities of doing collections, you know, getting funds, or credit and debit, you know, assessing funds, or fraud, you know, assessing funds and shutting down certain lines of funds. You know, a lot of what we were doing was just far beyond what our peers could understand and far beyond what our administrators really understood. So I kind of forgot about what I was discussing. Turnovers. So yeah, essentially I just wanted to discuss turnovers because for Class 7, they had a higher rate of turnovers in comparison to Class 8. And just me being, I guess, someone with a brain and just assessing the circumstance, You don't want to have a turnover. It's just unattractive for any business. It's unattractive to any foundation. You want to ensure that you keep retention. You want to ensure that you sustain engagement. It's quite comparable to YouTube. A lot of these YouTubers are always out here fishing for subscribers and fishing for, likes and comments and everything, because they need to sustain that retention. They need to sustain that stream of traffic. So they're trying to retain their current audience to develop a larger engagement. So yeah. I say all this to say, we had a lot of kids that just were straggling pieces, a lot of kids that were just malleable, a lot of kids that just were walking growth areas. And there's nothing wrong with that, but when you put them in environments that just facilitate that weakness, you're not helping them grow. You're not. So like, for example, we had this one girl, and I'm not going to get specific, never mind, but we had this one girl. She was functionally illiterate, and this is not to be mean or rude, like she was just functionally illiterate. Data entry. Just key in some things, honey. Autocorrect will fix it if you don't know it. We're not going to put you on the phone because you don't know how to articulate yourself accordingly. We're gonna facilitate that growth area. That's what I mean when I say like they just walking growth areas, walking, messes. So I feel like we reached a point where we can conclude. Within the later end of this video, I'm just going to be posting screenshots that I had from 2018 to 2019 with individuals from my externship department, as well as just other Europe students that I was affiliated with during that time. I guess I'll also mention that in doing this program, it's really up to your discretion and what you feel is vital for you. For me, when I did the Europe program, I just thought I was going to be receiving exclusive access or intimate conversations pertaining to business. Even if they weren't going to prepare me to be an entrepreneur, maybe they were going to, just teach me something more than what I already knew about business or how to present myself as a business or a brand, Like, it didn't really teach me business per se, but it taught me the decorum. It taught me the aesthetics of being a business professional. So it's really up to your discernment. Like, for example, we had this one girl who also utilized Europe for the benefits, what she presumed she would receive from this program. And honestly, when you get into programs like this, you don't know what you're getting into until you get into it, especially Europe, because if you tell me half of the truth, you're telling me a whole lie. Because how can you have these students recruit me, such as my cousin? My cousin recruited me while she was in learning and development. How can you sell me a half experience? You know what I mean? And I don't fault her for that, because girl, get your $100, and girl, you offered me an opportunity that I could benefit from. But how are you gonna sell me something that you didn't even fully experience? That's what I'm discussing when I say like there's certain areas in this program where you're telling me half the truth, but it's a whole lie. No, tell me when you graduate the program, and tell me how you feel about it then. And even then, my cousins would put me on to certain things that they were experiencing, but their experience was just, different than mine, or maybe their perception of their experience was more tolerable to where they're not having the discussions that I'm having. But, just getting to the point, we had this one girl who was a business owner. She had her own daycare, she had her own skincare line, and she was working on other endeavors that she was pursuing. Like, she was a full-blown entrepreneur. And even her being in this program, she was like, this is a crock of crap. Like, this is just not even worth it. We had a lot of other girls that would do this program because they were like the GLAM girls, the MAC girls, the Sephora girls. They worked in the mall, and they just wanted to pursue a job that would be reliable and allow them to sustain and maintain the lifestyle that they are accustomed to living, or so, desperately, I wouldn't say desperately, but, so desired to live. So I guess what I'm saying is like, not everybody's story for Europe is a struggle story, because I know they like to advocate that, they like to shop that. I'll never forget when I was in the auditorium, and they just had a lot of these Caucasian executives and CEOs come in that they were trying to recruit as far as being like partners with, and they were just selling everybody's sob stories, telling every crackhead mama, every dumpster baby story to, you know, get the likeness of these CEOs and executives. So, you know, it's really up to your discernment and what you feel is necessary. So I guess to close out this video, moreover, don't really have high expectations for this program. Don't have high expectations for administrative staffing, at least as it pertains to the Jacksonville location. And if the instructors and or administrators that I attended class 8 with are still present within whatever class you attend, don't expect too much out of them, because not every last one of your coaches are going to have your best interests, or not every last one of your coaches are going to be able to advocate for you as efficiently as you can advocate for yourself. Anything that I got that was so necessary, yet I felt like I was being deprived of, I got it off of my own back, off of me self-advocating. My coach did not advocate for me. And that's the reason why I was in home equity line of credits. You do have some of those coaches, like for one of my friends, like they will ride for you. They're like, honey, she's not going over there. She's going over here. You're going to have to fight me about it because she deserves to be in this location. Whereas my coach, you know, he'll just roll over and take it like, whatever, okay, I guess we're going to have to send her there. I know she doesn't want to go, but we'll send her there. You know, it's kind of like school. It just felt like a whole class act. Like, even between the administrators, they could be quite childish. And you know who's the stronger administrator. You know who, you know, has the most say-so. You know who has the most leverage. And my coach just was not leveraged. My coach really was always sunned by anybody and everybody, to be quite honest. Like, he was... I'm not going to say that word, but if you know, he was, you know, he was like that. So just like I said, don't expect too much out of these administrators and or staffing. I would say be careful with the whole notion of advocating your story, because lines can be very much so blurred. And I discussed that within one of my commentaries. I basically had a classmate who mentioned her depression within her 7-second resume, and that did not translate well, because within business, you're not going to mention your depression. You're not going to go on an interview at any location and mention your depression. Yet there were blurred lines as to what should be kept personal and what should be personable. You know what I mean? Like, our branding was just so entangled with like our domestics and our backstory and our struggle if we had any adversity, and they would always try to pull my adversity out of me. I went through a lot of, you know, trials during that experience, but I would never like tell a soul, like, no, like that's just not me. Like, that's private. Not that I don't, you know, mediate those situations accordingly, but other people don't need to know about it if you don't need to know about it. They like to use your story so they can solicit it. So, and I discussed that in other videos as well. Like, definitely look at my more formal videos. I know they can probably be a bit boring than, you know, me just talking informally, but definitely check them out, because I really do this to like share my experience and furthermore, you know, facilitate a healthier experience for you guys. I can't change the administrators. I can't change the system, but I can, you know, assist the mentality of those that are going into it so that you can advantage it better.